Today on our Focus at 4, we look to the entertainment world. Pop star Kesha is embroiled in a legal battle against Sony producer Dr. Luke after some allegations against him. She recently broke her silence on the case by thanking her fans on Instagram. It's the first time we've really heard directly from her. It just marked the first time that she's talked to her fans since she sued to leave her record label, Sony, so she could avoid working with Dr. Luke. Here's what happened. Kesha has accused Dr. Luke of sexual abuse. A judge has so far denied Kesha's attempts to get out of her contract. Sony saying she can work with another producer, but can't get out of her contract. E.J. Smith from the Sexual Assault Resource Center is here today to discuss this case. And E.J., we're talking about your counselor over the Sexual Assault Resource Center, so you're familiar with cases like this, though on a presumably less public scale, at least we hope so. And what I was telling EJ, we first want to say we understand that Dr. Luke has not been charged with sexual assault. Kesha has brought this as a civil suit, so we understand he hasn't been charged. At this point, he is an alleged attacker. But still, these allegations of sexual abuse and what they have done to her are horrifying and mirror so much what we see, again, on a less public scale. So, EJ, my first question for you is, what would it be like for a survivor of attacks like these and behavior like this, treatment like this? What would it be like to be forced to work with that attacker?
It would probably be close to their worst nightmare,
Sure.
that I would imagine. I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like to feel forced and compelled now in a very public manner to have to go and do that. And there's some pretty serious psychological consequences that can happen as a result. Emotionally, you'll see, maybe that person is going to have hyperarousal, which means they're just going to be on edge all the time, and increasing anxiety. You'll see things where, when you're on edge, you don't sleep right, and that can impact your daily life. You might suffer depression and hopelessness, and then having it blasted across the media like this. While I think it's great to talk about sexual assault and it's important, there's also the consequence to see your business kind of out there for public scrutiny. So that can have some consequences. Even physical, we've seen studies that are coming out that show a correlation between high stressful experiences and environments and autoimmune disorders and GI issues and pain, headaches, muscle tension, all of this kind of stuff. So the brain and the body really work together, and so it can really affect somebody's life.
Sure, these true physiological effects, and then to think that Kesha might have to produce art under these circumstances. If these allegations are true and if this is really how she's feeling, like you said, what a nightmare situation. I want to talk about how power plays into this. Yes. Dr. Luke being her producer and Kesha being under this contract, again, these allegations, I guess essentially the point is, what would Dr. Luke's position of power have to do in this situation?
I'm so glad you asked that, because oftentimes when we talk about artists, we talk about them in a position of power and privilege.
Sure, she's a diva, she's an artist, she does whatever she wants, but that's not really the case.
No, it's not. And usually when those conversations happen, it's in relation to the fan,
sure. Right?
So an artist would have a power and influence over their fans, but in this case, this person is basically holding the key to her career. And so there's a power differential that exists there, and that's why in other professions, right, that's why teachers aren't allowed to sleep with their students, counselors aren't allowed to sleep with their clients, right. Doctors and patients, coaches and athletes, and those types of things. And that's because the risk for exploitation, sexual coercion, where, oh, you want this thing? Well, you need to do all of this in order to get this thing being your career. That's unethical. And so that's why certain professions have those protections in place, and it's for this very thing.
Sure, consent gets very tricky, very dicey when one person holds so much power over the other. In the last couple minutes we have, I also want to talk about, because there have been so many messages of support for Kesha in this situation, from celebrities and from, I don't know, everybody on my Facebook feed.
Yeah.
But there are others on the other side who say, well, why didn't she come out and talk about this earlier? Why hasn't she gone to the police and charged him? So why hasn't she? Because so many don't.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because in Texas, they estimate about 82% of sexual assault cases go unreported. It's one of the highest rates of underreporting for any type of crime, and Texas is not the exception. They fall smack in the middle of that national statistic. So a lot of people don't report, and I mean, think about it. We have trouble talking about healthy consensual sex in the public domain. So when you're talking about something that was violent, it was taken from you, it's embarrassing to have somebody, do something to you.
Sure.
And that intimate level. I don't know how many people would actually step forward.
Especially in such a public setting as she would necessarily have to make this, wanting to get out of this contract.
Absolutely. Yeah. Other people, there was a girl that stepped forward who was in a FSU battle because she had alleged that one of their football players had sexually assaulted her, and she got death threats.
Sure.
So people were coming out and being very, very aggressive. So when a survivor chooses to speak out, it's such an act of bravery. And that's why, if somebody comes out and they tell me that they've been sexually assaulted, I absolutely hands down believe them.
Right.
And
because
then,
you know what it has taken for them to come out here and
Oh my
say
gosh.
that. We gotta wrap up here, but EJ Smith, thank you so much for being here, helping us dig a little bit into this. We don't expect these kind of very serious topics to always come out of entertainment news, but here it is right in the forefront. And like you said, I think it's very much worth talking about. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, stick with us. We have a whole lot more coming up.